Hi, my name is Ken Balbuena, and I'm the Director of Communications and Outreach at the St. John Paul II National Shrine in Washington, D.C. The Shrine is pleased to rebroadcast this past webinar, originally recorded on June 26, 2020, in which we featured the Shrine's curator, as well as the curator from the Knights of Columbus Museum in New Haven, Connecticut. Now, these two excellent team members highlighted several artifacts from the Shrine's permanent exhibit that actually belong to the Knights of Columbus, who sponsor the work of the Shrine. We are very pleased that the founder of the Knights of Columbus, Father Michael J. McGivney, was beatified on October 31st, just yesterday from the date of this rebroadcast. This past August, at the Knights of Columbus 138th Supreme Convention, it was announced that the Knights of Columbus Museum would be renamed the Blessed Michael McGivney Pilgrimage Center. The ceremony making this transition official just happened moments ago. And to celebrate Blessed McGivney's beatification and the new Pilgrimage Center, we wanted to bring this webinar back to you so that you will join us in congratulating the new Pilgrimage Center and continue to pray for Blessed Michael McGivney's intercession as he advances on his path towards sainthood. Thank you very much and enjoy. Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar brought to you by the St. John Paul II National Shrine and the Knights of Columbus Museum. My name is Ken Balbuena, and I am the Director of Communications and Outreach at the Shrine. I'll be serving as your host and moderator for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us on this feast day of Saint Jose Maria Escriva. Today we're featuring two guests, both named Bethany. Bethany Bromwell is of the St. John Paul II National Shrine staff, and Bethany Sheffer is of the Knights of Columbus Museum. Bethany Bromwell is a curator of collections for the St. John Paul II National Shrine. She graduated from Gettysburg College in 2006, where she majored in history and received her master's in public history from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in 2008. Before joining the Shrine staff in its infancy in 2013, Bethany worked in the archives at Mystic Seaport in Mystic, Connecticut. Bethany Sheffer is the curator and registrar of the Knights of Columbus Museum. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Cincinnati and a Master of Library Science from the State University of New York at Albany. She has been in the museum field for almost 18 years and has been the curator and registrar for the Knights of Columbus Museum in New Haven, Connecticut since March of 2013. Now, we will have a question and answer period towards the end of this webinar, so please be sure to use the Q&A box that should be at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as possible. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. We're very pleased to welcome both Bethany's. So Bethany and Bethany, welcome.
Hello.
All right, we got one Bethany.
Yeah, almost there. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you guys.
Excellent. Well, welcome to both of you again. We're very excited to have you here, and we're very excited to hear quite a few of the different things that we're going to learn about in the Knights of Columbus Museum, as well as the St. John Paul II National Shrine permanent exhibit. Now, I want to start with this first piece that we're going to see over here in just a second. So this is one of my favorite pieces in the collection. It's affectionately known as the Two Pope Chair. It was commissioned by the Knights of Columbus for St. John Paul II's October 6, 1995 Mass on the grounds of the Aqueduct Racetrack in Queens, New York, and it was later used for an event held at what is now the St. John Paul II National Shrine during Pope Benedict's visit in 2008. It was the only time that he's ever been to the United States in his pontificate. Now, I understand the chair itself has traveled back and forth a few times from DC and New Haven, Connecticut. Can you tell me a little bit about the chair as well as its travels?
Great. Thank you, Ken, and I want to thank you all for listening in on this discussion. As you mentioned, the papal chair was created specifically for the papal mass at Aqueduct Racetrack, which was co-sponsored by the Knights of Columbus and the Diocese of Brooklyn. It was designed by the architectural firm Roche Dinkloo and Associates with the assistance of John Kordak, and is based off the specific requirements provided by the Vatican. It was then manufactured by the Hartford firm Arthur T. Foote. And on a side note, for those of you who are not familiar with Kevin Roche, he was the world-renowned architect who designed the current Knights of Columbus Supreme Council building in New Haven, Connecticut. So the chair is made of walnut and it has velvet upholstery. and has some very interesting elements to it. It stands over 6 feet, 6.5 feet tall, and the seat itself is 23 inches off the ground. And for perspective, the chair I'm currently sitting on is 16 inches off the ground. So the reason it's so high is because the Pope did have some back issues, so it was easier for him to get in and out of a chair that was higher. And also the seat, the depth of the chair was a little bit shallow because he generally tended to sit a little leaning forward. So with a shorter depth, the actual chair, he could still lean against the back of the seat. But the most interesting part of the chair is actually, per the request of the Technical Services Division of the Secret Service, a ballistic steel shield was inserted into the back of the seat from a removable panel. And this shield was then returned to the Secret Service after the Mass was concluded. So for many years after this, the chair was on display in our papal gallery at the Knights of Columbus Museum, as well as several exhibitions featuring the life of John Paul II. And as mentioned earlier, it did take a trip to Washington. It went down in 2008 to what was then the John Paul II Cultural Center, now Shrine. And Pope Benedict XVI actually sat in the chair during an interfaith meeting. So finally, the chair was sent to the shrine in March of 2012, where it continues to be to this day. I don't know if the ballistic shield, because they added another one to it for the Benedict meeting. I don't know if it's still in it or not, but someday we'll find out. And at this time, I ask Bethany if she has any additional comments about its time at the shrine.
Of course I do. Hello, everyone. It's a very fascinating object. This chair, it's quite beautiful and enormous. It weighs, we believe, almost 800 pounds, because that steel plate, it's still there. So when we negotiated it into its case that you'll see in a little while, it definitely took some time and some effort. But it's quite the beautiful piece. And it's a beautiful item that we have that really highlights the Knights' connection to several popes, not just John Paul II, but also Pope Benedict. And we hope one day maybe Pope Francis will sit there as well.
Yeah, that would be great if you could. It'd be a 3-pope chair. We can update.
Exactly.
Is that the official description of it? The 2-pope chair?
We always call it the Aqueduct chair, honestly. But I like 2-pope chair right now. It's good.
Nice. All right, fantastic. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring up on screen really quickly what it looks like now that it's here in our exhibit. Okay, so we've got it there. There's a lot of other different things that are surrounding it. You can see towards the left-hand side of the screen, actually towards the middle left-hand side of the screen, that there's different photos that are there. And then off to the right-hand side of our screen, we see a couple of different artifacts. And I'll pull up just a couple of images that you would expect to find around there. This particular one I always find rather entertaining and rather funny. It's the Family of the Year for the Knights of Columbus, and they're getting recognized. And why I think it's a little funny is that the one person who's missing is the wife and the mother in this image. And some people have jokingly told me before, oh, she's probably the one taking the picture just to make sure that this moment in history gets documented. So, but we've got the widescreen of the stage here. And what I like about this one is that you can see some of the helicopters off to the side. And so St. John Paul II himself actually just landed right at the, he landed right on the grounds of the Aqueduct racetrack, and you can actually see him in the helicopter coming off right over there. Let's see, what else do we have here? We've got this gold level ticket. So it's a very important person must have had this particular one, because you can see that it's right in front of the altar in the center. And perhaps it was somebody from the Knights of Columbus Supreme Office staff who had this. We don't know. And a couple of other items. Now, this one's not on display, I don't believe, in our exhibits. But we do have a couple of pieces that are on display. We have this cross, which was made at a part of the stage, I believe, and I'll let you all talk about that. But we also have this coin, and we have this interesting rosary. Can you tell me anything interesting about this particular rosary, or the rosaries in general from the Mass?
All right. Do you want me to handle this? I think
yes,
I can.
Go ahead.
Okay. So that rosary, there were many that were made that were distributed for that Papal Mass, and they were all made in Italy. And that particular one was actually distributed to the ladies. So all the ladies got white rosaries. And it has actually been blessed by then Supreme Chaplain Bishop Thomas Daly.
Oh, fantastic. And now many of the members of the Knights of Columbus, may recognize that particular rosary because it's very similar to the ones that we get when we become knights. And it's funny you mentioned about Bishop Daly blessing that, because the rosaries we get are blessed by Archbishop Laurie, the Supreme Chaplain of the Knights of Columbus. Okay. All right, let me show you just one last thing that we've got. I
was going to say, Ken, I believe that cross is actually made from the pieces of the stage from the Aqueduct Mass that day. It's very exciting. And then Bethany, I believe that's the medal from the next year's Supreme Council meeting.
Yeah, so though it does feature the Pope in the chair, it's definitely the year after. It was produced as a delegate gift for that year's Supreme Convention, which I can't remember where it was, but it was the 114th Supreme Convention.
Excellent. All right, so we've got just another little piece over here, but I do want to move on to the next question. And just as a reminder for all of our audience out there, that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to be able to ask us any of your questions, and we'll get to as many as possible. All right, we're very blessed to have the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy serving at the shrine. And for those in our audience who are not aware, the sisters are of the same congregation as St. Faustina, who received the message of divine mercy. Now, St. John Paul II can be seen in this photo here, blessing an image of the divine mercy that was given to the Knights of Columbus. Now, how did this blessing and gifting come about, and where is this image located today?
That image today is located in it's located in the St. John Paul II National Shrine at the end of our exhibit. Bethany, did you want to tell its story about how it got there?
So actually, I think you have the notes for that, because that's the one I didn't write about.
Of course. No, I wanted to make sure I didn't step on your toes there.
Yes, all right, I'm glad.
This beautiful image, it's absolutely stunning in person. It's a reproduction painting of the original Divine Mercy image from St. Faustina's convent. This was originally loaned to the Knights of Columbus for the 121st Supreme Convention prayer program in celebration of the 25th anniversary of Pope John Paul II's pontificate. Pope John Paul II blessed this image of Divine Mercy during a meeting with Supreme Knight Carl Anderson, his lovely wife Dorian, and Dr. Stanislaw Griegel in 2003. That image, which is this same image, was then used in a year-long Knights of Columbus prayer program, praying for the Pope and all priests. Now, it was originally, this image was based on what is called the Hyla Divine Mercy image, painted in 1943 by Adolf Hyla, and he presented it to the convent chapel of St. Faustina's group in Krakow as an offering for his family, having survived World War II, as a thank you. This copy itself, like I said, it was painted in 2003. And on August 6, 2003, a prayer service inaugurated the Divine Mercy Hour of Prayer, the Holy Hour program that began order-wide on October 16th, the anniversary of John Paul II's election as Pope. In addition, copies of prints were distributed to each of the order's 70 jurisdictions. The images traveled to local councils, parishes, and even to several U.S. cathedrals. It's a program that we still have today, that the Knights still take part in today. They send beautiful Marian images around, and it's been a really beautiful way for images of Mary to circulate to everyone. Everyone has available access to them, as well as learning more about beautiful Mary and how she cares for us and in different ways and different intentions. Ken, could you put that picture back up where you see the Supreme Knight?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll throw it.
Thank you.
Sure, there you go.
Perfect. Yes, this is also featured next to the image so that you can see it in context. My favorite part is how you see the Pope's beloved secretary, now Cardinal to the left here, we call him the Blur, but that's Stanislaw Živić, the Pope's then Bishop Secretary, and you'll always notice him in the photos in our exhibit. He's one of my favorite things to find.
Yeah, he's definitely, it's a little fun thing among some of the staff to try and see how many times you can actually find him. All right, so we'll go back through again, see some of these images. All right, now, the St. John Paul II National Shrine has been in the news a little bit lately, but during his 26-and-a-half-year pontificate, St. John Paul II met with 5 U.S. presidents of different political ideologies to preach messages of peace and brotherhood, coexistence between peoples, service to humanity, the spirit of compassion, and the promotion of moral values in American society. But he also met with controversial world leaders like Fidel Castro and Vladimir Putin, in addition to publicly forgiving his would-be assassin when they met face-to-face. Now, this note that St. John Paul II wrote to our Supreme Knight says, "As long as I have breath within me, I shall cry out, peace in the name of God." Now, what was the context behind this letter, and how important was diplomacy for St. John Paul II?
So this letter was given to the Supreme Knight, Carl Anderson, during an audience with the Pope on November 23rd, 2002. During this meeting, the Supreme Knight gave the Pope his annual check from the Vicarius Christi Fund, which was established by the Knights of Columbus in 1981. These funds are given to the Pope for him to use for his personal charities. Now, the words themselves actually come from a proclamation by the Pope that he made during a visit to Azerbaijan in May of 2002. And if I may, I'm going to read a little bit more from that actual message. "I have come to Azerbaijan as an ambassador of peace. As long as I have breath within me, I shall cry out, peace in the name of God. And when word joins word, a chorus is born, a symphony, which will spread to every soul, quench hatred, and disarm hearts." So the museum actually included the words in the letter for the cover image of the 2003 exhibition, John Paul II, A Passion for Peace. And I think we have an image of that.
We sure do. Now, the letter itself also, too, was loaned to the State Department for a little display that they had. Bethany Bromwell, could you talk a little bit about that?
You bet. Yes, we were very fortunate in that in honor of the 35th anniversary of formal diplomatic relations between the United States and the Holy See, the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See, Callista Gingrich, contacted us and asked if we would be interested, which we said, of course, in participating in an exhibit honoring such a celebration. We said we would be honored. We took her on a tour, showed her all of our objects, and she selected 3 items. The letter was one of them. The other 2 were the Congressional Gold Medal and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Both had been awarded to John Paul II. Now, it was a really important exhibit because it highlighted a longstanding bilateral relation that was formalized in 1984. It had existed, but not in a formal sense. But in 1984, President Ronald Reagan and St. John Paul II are the ones who officially set up diplomatic relations. And today, the United States and the Holy See work together to advance peace, freedom, and human dignity throughout the world. And the exhibit was held at the Diplomacy Center, which is the State Department's new museum. And it's a really wonderful way for us to be involved on multi-levels and to show that, you know, John Paul II steps outside of kind of standard religious boundaries and reaches into these very high-level kind of international ideas. And we're just very excited to be asked to be involved in all of it.
Excellent. Well, since we were talking about peace and diplomacy, our next artifact that I wanted to discuss kind of focuses on that a little bit. It's this peace lamp from the 2002 World Day of Peace Interfaith Prayer Service. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, and this is one I had to do a little more research on. So, because I haven't seen it in person. And so this was a lamp that was used for the World Peace Summit that was hosted by the Vatican in Assisi, Italy on January 24th, 2002. The pilgrimage was called for in response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And over 200 religious leaders from numerous denominations attended the event. And the Knights of Columbus actually provided the funding for the worldwide distribution via satellite. And of course, when the lamp is lit, it's a symbol of hope and through a very difficult period of time. Now, while all the attendees received a lamp to use in the event, this one is specifically used by John Paul II. The lamp was designed by Sister M. Agar Locke, who is a member of the Sisters Disciples of the Divine Master. Now, the lamp was actually used again. It was on September 11th, 2002. Our Supreme Knight used the lamp during a Supreme Assembly meeting in Washington. He used the lamp to light candles in the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. That is a mouthful.
It's not the same place as the shrine, just
yeah,
exactly.
Correct. Yeah. That's why I'm saying the whole thing. And it was during a special mass and a day of remembrance.
Excellent. All right. Now this was not the first time that there was a World Day of Peace. Many people will recognize the one from 1986, and St. John Paul II actually had organized this whole thing. And there's a great section in our exhibit that talks a little bit about this over at the shrine. But I do want to move on to our next question here. So in April of 2019, the shrine hosted a temporary display showcasing 7 African art sculptures of Mary and the Holy Family. They've been on display both at the Knights of Columbus Museum as well as at the shrine.
Yeah, so these have a very long story. Every Christmas, the Knights of Columbus features an exhibition on creches or nativity scenes. The theme varies from year to year, and in 2011, the focus was Christmas across Africa. And in that exhibit, there were 40 stone sculptures made by artisans of the Shona nation of Zimbabwe. The pieces were on loan from a German collector, Hans Dietrich Hubert. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He fell in love with the art form and commissioned the pieces from artisans that he had befriended during his time he spent in Zimbabwe. And eventually the museum purchased 7 of these pieces, which have been featured in additional exhibits, both at the museum as well as the shrine. Now, the sculptures are made of what is called spring stone, which is a type of serpentine stone, and it's found throughout Zimbabwe. In fact, the name Zimbabwe is derived from the Shona phrase, meaning large houses of stone. And that's what they actually made their houses out of, was this particular serpentine stone, and as well as other things, tools as well. So their sculptures, however, gained international following in the 1960s, and today the pieces are sold to provide significant income for the artists and their families. Now, the most interesting element about these sculptures is what actually happens to the stone when it's being worked with. The stone is typically a reddish gray in color, and there's one piece that you definitely see that in. But once the artist begins to carve into it, it turns this light gray. And then when the artist is starting to polish the piece, that's when the real color actually is revealed. And it all depends on what type of stone it actually is. So in our case, we have 6 that are black serpentine stone or spring stone, and we have 1 that is green. And I'm aware that there's also colors that are red and yellow. So they're fabulous pieces for sure.
Yeah. Now this particular one that I'm going to put up on screen here, this photo really doesn't do it justice. It's actually over 8 feet tall and quite a bit taller than the other sculptures. I imagine that one's a little difficult to move, wouldn't you say?
Yes, this is actually one of my favorite questions of this, because it allows me to actually talk about behind the scenes in exhibitions and how we install things. So when we decided to purchase these 7 sculptures, we decided to purchase the biggest ones. And that means also the heaviest ones. So that statue weighs 800 pounds at least. And we do not have a freight elevator. So it does not fit in our regular elevator at all. And it is stored typically on our 2nd floor. So whenever we need to move it, it takes about 6 to 8 people, depending on if it has a crate. If it's in the crate. And I just want to make a special shout out to the Petra Construction for all the times I asked you to move this statue, and also to our facilities team, because this year, when it came back from the shrine, I asked them to join in on the fun and try to move this thing up the stairs. So they are still speaking to me. So I'm very thankful about that. And I will say that that statue is not the heaviest. The second tallest one, which is in the slideshow, it was lying on its side. That one is actually around 50 pounds more, but it thankfully fits in the elevator.
Excellent. All right. Anything you wanted to add, Bethany?
I did. That first image that you showed, that was when we had them here. It was a really exciting time because we had a very exciting program kind of going on at the same period of time there. You can see to the left there on the side, there's beautiful hand-painted Stations of the Cross. And it's a wonderful program that we put on that really was kind of wonderfully reflected in the African art as well, because this whole program we work with local artists, especially artists of color, to produce a celebration of their work in image, in music, and in dance. And the statues stayed around longer than the stations stayed up. They were so incredibly popular. The USCCB Office of National Collections in charge of Africa came over and took pictures, and they were just so excited to use them as part of their prayer program. They thought they were absolutely amazing. So, the idea that we can not only share items that inspire people and inspire the community, but that they then reach out to the world is always very exciting.
Awesome. Now, normally it seems that the Knights of Columbus Museum tends to lend to the shrine artifacts, but with this next piece, it was actually the opposite. The relic of a piece of St. John Paul II's cassock that he wore during the assassination attempt of May 13, 1981, is part of the shrine's collection. Now, it should be clear that the entire cassock is actually at the sanctuary of John Paul II in Krakow, Poland, but a portion of that is a relic that the shrine does have in its collection. Now, how has this relic been showcased at the Knights of Columbus Museum?
Yeah, so we've exhibited it twice. The first time was during John Paul II's canonization celebrations. The relic was actually carried in a procession from St. Stanislaus Church in New Haven to our museum, which is less than a mile away from each other. And then it was on display for several days after. And then the second time, which is a lot more recent, it was done in conjunction with our 2018 Christmas exhibition, Christmas in Poland. We had a section that featured the Pope. So in January of 2019, we borrowed the relic again, and for a weekend event near the end of the exhibit's run, because our Christmas exhibit tends to run from November until the beginning of February.
Excellent. All right. Bethany Bromwell, anything you wanted to bring up about the relic?
I would just say that it's one of 3 relics that we currently, when it's here, we have 3 relics of John Paul II in-house, because we have the blood relic that's built into the altar in the chapel, but we also have a relic of John Paul II in the main altar that is a relic of his hair. So we're very, very blessed in terms of how well he is represented within our building.
Well, speaking of relics, another relic that's often displayed for official Knights of Columbus functions is the relic of the Mexican martyrs. Can you please tell our audience who these martyrs were and a little bit about their relics?
Yes, so the first thing I want to do is apologize in advance, because I am definitely not an expert on the Cristeros Rebellion, which these pertain to. That is a multiple webinars worth of information right there. So I'm going to really gloss over that particular conflict, and it was incredibly serious conflict. So it occurred in the late 1920s. Between the Mexican government and those opposed to the anti-religious and anti-Catholic rules that had been put forth in the 1917 Constitution, which were then heavily reinforced in the mid-1920s. By the time this was over, many were killed during the period, including several priests. Now, in May of 2000, John Paul II canonized 25 individuals who were martyred due to their faith. This included 6 priests who were also members of the Knights of Columbus. And our museum actually has a number of pieces that either depict the martyrs or are specifically pertaining to them. The first image you actually saw is a painting by Martha Orozco. I don't think I pronounced that correctly, who commissioned, it was commissioned in 2005, and it's on the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Knights of Columbus in Mexico. Now, the second object is a silver cross reliquary, which has bone fragments of all 6 priests and was given to the museum by the Knights of Columbus Mexico state councils. And there are multiple state councils, so I'm not actually sure which one it came from. I'm assuming it's meant to represent all of them. So, and this reliquary is usually sent to the Supreme Convention every year. And then finally, the museum also has a surplice worn by one of the martyrs, Saint Jose Maria Robales Hurtado. Again, I apologize for the pronunciation. And it was gifted to us from the order that Hurtado founded, the Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And Saint Jose was a member of Council 1979 and was executed by hanging in 1927. Now, we typically don't display the surplice. It is very, very fragile. It has a beautiful amount of lacework to it, so it is incredibly light sensitive, and it's in an actual special case for it. So it doesn't get out very much to protect it.
Up on screen right now as well. All right. And Bethany Bromwell, what are we looking at here? Any idea?
This would be one of the relics that is in the main altar in our church. It's the relic. It is actually a vertebrae. I'm not sure which number vertebrae, but it is a vertebrae of, let's see. Yes, exactly, Brother Hurtado. Sorry, I misplaced my notes on him. Yes, on Brother Hurtado. And it is literally, as you can see here, when we had the altar consecrated, it's an absolutely beautiful process. And along the bottom, there's circles of the marble that are cut out by the stone carver. And they're just large enough for a small relic to fit into each one. Each one is labeled with the name of the saint. And so during the consecration, they are all placed within the altar. The consecration mass is then held, the altar is blessed, and then what you see there is our wonderful Cardinal Zivich, Cardinal Wuerl, and Archbishop Laurie and the Supreme Knight all signing off on which relics were put into the altar. And that's the official sign off that it has been officially consecrated. We hung one of those in the sacristy, and then you have to mail the other one off so you get certified, much like a marriage certificate.
Well, small little tidbit that I'll share with our audience out there that I didn't realize until we were putting this webinar together is that when they're signing their certificates, it actually is saying that these relics are inside the Redeemer of Man Church. Although at the shrine, we refer to Redemptor Hominis Church, which was the first and second St. John Paul II. So very interesting that it's got the English translation on there. All right. So another thing that I just want to talk about here, this is our last artifact that we're going to be talking about. The shrine has on display a lot of liturgical vestments. One of them that I like to point out is this mitre that's on screen, because when you look at it from a distance, the red crosses really seem to stand out. But the closer and closer you get to it, you see that there are actually gold arrows that surround the crosses that seem to be a little bit more prominent. Can you please tell us a little bit about what this mitre was used for and why it's now on display at the shrine and was on display at the museum as well?
Yeah, so the mitre was actually worn by John Paul II at the celebration of the Eucharist on March 21st, 2000 in Amman, Jordan. And it was during the Pope's Jubilee pilgrimage to the Holy Land. And it's red and it's gold and red colored silk, and it features metallic braid and red beadwork. Now, it was given to the Knights of Columbus Museum in 2001 in honor of the opening of our museum in its current location. which is about a block from the Supreme Council headquarters. Our museum had actually originally been in the 4th floor of the headquarters. So technically we are about to celebrate our, 20th anniversary in our current headquarters, our current building. But the museum's been around since 1982.
Very nice. All right. Well, we do have a couple of questions that are here in our audience that I want to get to, and you can spend as little or as much time on it as possible. We've got roughly about 10-15 minutes left in the webinar, so I'm going to go through these as quickly as I can. So can you talk a little bit about the Knights of Columbus work with St. John Paul II? So that might be maybe Bethany Sheffer would be a good question for you.
More of like Bromwell, because my focus is more on Father McGivney. But then I can add in any points after she goes.
Sure.
Let's see, that's an excellent question because there's so much. Basically, the Knights, as we know, have been in Rome for let's say at least this century, where they've been actively involved in what's going on there. They've donated money to help with everything from art restorations to, helping with Pope Francis's newest House for the Poor. I mean, you name it, they've helped take part in some sort of leading the way, whether it's been through writing religious freedom, helping with writing religious freedom legislation here in the United States. They're constantly involved in making sure that whatever efforts the Vatican puts out, that they can champion those here in the United States. So really kind of, you name it, they try it. And think down to the council level as well. What I love most about the connection between the Knights and John Paul II is that they take his message and they bring it down to a actual physical, manifestable level within the councils. And that's both through their work with those in need, and through basically everything they do from, the donate coats, everything. They just carry on his message forward. But specifically, pick a year. There would be at least 12 things to tell you that they were involved in each and every one. But if you do go to the Knights of Columbus page, there's a really lovely timeline that was put together. And I can share I was using it for research myself earlier this week, but it's a really lovely timeline of the Knights actually face-to-face meeting with the popes, in particular with John Paul II. So if you have questions about dates in particular and things like that and different particular initiatives that they were involved in, I would recommend checking out their website.
So now I can add my stuff.
There you go.
Yes. So the one thing is that we do have a Rome office, actually has been there for quite a while. And that allows us to stay close in contact with the Vatican. And one of the things that actually our curatorial assistant reminded me is that I want to talk a little bit about the restoration of St. Peter's Basilica in the 1980s. And actually in one of the photos you saw earlier of the sculpture being carried down the stairs, you'll notice that there was a very large cross on the wall. And that was originally a part of the facade of St. Peter's. And because the Knights did a significant amount of funding for the restoration, and they also determined that that particular cross could never be returned to the top of the building. And so they actually donated the cross to the Knights of Columbus, and it was in our home office for many years and then moved into the current location. So, and then there's many other chapels that they actually had funding towards too.
Very much.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we have a question here about Father McGivney. So Bethany Sheffer.
That's me. Hopefully. Yeah. I've been doing a lot of research on him right now. So.
All right. So we actually have two questions here. So what is the kind of the future of the Knights of Columbus work with regard to the mission and legacy of Father McGivney, but also can you talk a little bit about his upcoming beatification?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't know a lot of what's currently the plans are for the beatification. Because our museum is closed due to this lovely virus that is going around, there is a lot that's been stalled in the process as far as that's concerned. And what was the first question? And that question is best asked to contact the Knights of Columbus directly.
Okay. Awesome.
So what was the first part of the question though? I don't think I answered it. So
let me see, because I think I closed that one out. It was about the Knights of Columbus, like their future work to keep Father McGivney's legacy alive.
Okay, yeah, and that's definitely more of a question directly to the Knights of Columbus Supreme Council and what those currently, the projects that they are currently doing. I mean, they always continue to support all of the, of all what he stood for in truth.
Understood. All right, so this question here is, did St. John Paul II did St. John Paul II have a vision for the Knights of Columbus, or was there anything that he was ever tasked, did he ever task the Knights to do?
The one thing that maybe not necessarily John Paul II, but definitely the Vatican, and that is supporting, and I mentioned before, satellite feeds, and the Knights of Columbus were heavily involved in getting the message out. So they would fund all of these programs to be able to be distributed throughout the world via satellite. Exactly. And actually, we have a sculpture that on display, it's missing one element, and it's called the procession. It is actually one of the early mock-ups of the statue that we have of Father McGivney. And the element it's actually missing, because we can't safely display it, is a satellite. And it's supposed to hang from the ceiling, but unfortunately that is not really an option, because we don't want people touching it and it's swaying back and forth. I mean, it's really small, but it's still like, it's too big of a temptation.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I would agree, Radio Europe was something that was vital to getting out the word of solidarity and the suffering in Poland, which was insanely important to John Paul II, as we all know. And the Knights have always supported the radio broadcast programs throughout the both United States and the international world. And they've only continued that access from wherever they are. I would just also add to that, they basically try to, when they find a hole or find a need, figure out how they can fix that, how they can do that. And so often he ends, the way that it works, often I know that the Supreme Knight will end up coming to them with ideas, and they're open to that, which is really wonderful. In terms of specific charges, that's a great question. I'm trying to think, I can't think of where he named them individually, but I know that he always met with them and saw them as, the kind of herders of the faith, the shepherds of the faith in the United States, and knew that it was in a good place as long as the Knights were in location. So I know that whenever there's somewhere that needs love, that's when you'll find the Knights, and that's usually when they'll send them there.
And normally during the Supreme Convention, there'll be a blessing that comes from the Pope too. So I'm assuming there's multiples of that over the course of a few years. And going back to the Aqueduct Mass, I believe that's the first time that a lay organization actually co-sponsored a papal Mass. So that is a pretty significant event for our history.
That's pretty cool. That's amazing. I didn't realize that. Bethany Bromwell.
Yes.
So gotta clarify on the Bethanies here. So Bethany Bromwell. So we see the picture here from the Aqueduct Mass with St. John Paul II and the ferula or pastoral staff, which is slightly different than the crozier, but we won't get into that for this webinar. Now, this is on display at our exhibit. But can you talk a little bit about that?
I sure can. It's such a fun piece. The Pope of Travels, and you can just tell by his implements. This is a beautiful silver crozier that was designed by Lello Scorzelli, and it was based on one that was owned by Paul VI originally. He liked that a lot, and so he had it kind of changed a little bit height-wise and shape-wise. So we ended up, it's on a very similar style display as you see here. It's quite tall. It looks even taller when you hang it on the wall like we have. But it comes apart right at the center there, and then once more below into three pieces. And it has its own traveling case because, when you're the Pope, you go wherever the people are. So it's one of my favorite items that I get to clean and take care of, but it's a very stunning piece of work. And you'll see that crucifix motif used throughout John Paul II's personal items. It's also the one that is on the Knights of Columbus rosaries. So it's a very, very one that's very much identified with him, but it did start with Paul VI.
And we actually have a sculpture that shows him holding it
exactly
in our Babel gallery. Yeah,
it's one of and it's such a beautiful, very kind of realistic sculpture. It's very it's not gory, but it's very real. Jesus doesn't look like he's beautiful and having a great time. He's suffering, obviously. The beauty of that sculpture obviously spoke to John Paul II. And then I believe that you had asked me a question on the side there about Fulton Sheen. And I just wanted to let you know that the question was, did Fulton Sheen and John Paul II ever meet? And the answer is yes, they did. They met, it was October 2nd, 1979 at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Archbishop Sheen was extremely ill at that time. He was very much at the end of his life, but he was so excited to see the Pope that he basically said, it doesn't matter, my spirit will carry me. And he made his way up to him and he hugged him. And, as always, John Paul II lifts people up as they kneel before him and in deference. And he lifts him up and says, he had hugged him and thanked him for having written and spoken well of the Lord Jesus and told him that he had been a loyal son of the church. I think it's okay to pass away once the Pope tells you that. You've done your job.
I would say so as well. But not looking at death, but on the other side, when you're youth, we have a question here about the connection between St. John Paul II, the Knights, and World Youth Day. What can you all tell me about that connection? Or maybe how it's displayed in our exhibit.
I was going to say, again, oh my, it's one of those where it's like, do you need funding for Bibles? How about funding for, kids' outfits? Like, again, the Knights always come to the rescue when things are needed.
Yeah. Significant financial support, actually.
Exactly. Yeah. Anytime, because you think about it, the worst thing in the world is when you're a kid and you want to go to World Youth Day, you bust your butt to make money so that you can earn your way to go, and then it just doesn't work. Well, luckily we have saviors like the Knights of Columbus to make things happen like that, because they know that the experience is the most important part. These people are young, hardworking, good kids. Let's get them together. Now, what you'll see at the shrine is a really, I think, a fun way to display it. We have I'm trying to think of what the right way to refer to it would be. We call it the hockey puck table. But what you do is you take little pucks that have different locations of past World Youth Days, and they lead you on a story through both imagery and videos and stories from people who have actually attended those World Youth Days. So it's a virtual travel experience. And then it allows you to leave a message at the end for other people who come through, much like the pilgrims at World Youth Day would do so for others. But it just showcases the variety of places traveled, the amazingness of how this elderly man got up there with these children and danced and sang, and it just, you could tell that even in his old age, it gave him so much joy to work with the young people, and that he truly believed that they were the future. But again, the Knights, let's see, the most recent World Youth Day, they put together, Bethany, can you identify the actual name of the event? I'm not remembering.
And I can't remember other than the information on the Mercy Center in Krakow.
Yes.
Which you guys know more, because I think there's a chair involved with this.
Yes, you nailed it.
But before you go into that, I just want to mention the fact that indeed, the Knights of Columbus have obviously been heavily involved with World Youth Day, not just during John Paul II's time, but it just continues to this day, and a constant support and for those who are attending, for sure. So I will let you talk about the chair. And
the chair, we have
I always
so
thought,
many,
because it was going to be in this webinar, and then we decided, we don't have time for it. So you get to talk about the chair.
But here we are. It came up anyway.
Yeah.
No, it's perfect. Yes, we have another beautiful chair made by a Polish craftsman that was used by Pope Francis at the Mercy Center during World Youth Day Krakow. So again, it's a beautiful piece of furniture. It has the World Youth Day symbol carved in the top. It's all wood, dark wood, and just a very simple cream base. So it's very Pope Francis in that it's elegant and understated, and yet very, very perfect for being available and being open and being at the same level as everybody else, as he likes to be, our Pope of the people. So yes, it's a really, really neat place, that we can have items like that, because obviously that story, like Bethany said, keeps going. Every World Youth Day, there's, more involvement, new places, new things, new adventures, and even if the Knights aren't physically, councils that have councils there, they still make sure that they're involved and do whatever they can to help.
And I would just like to say that when we heard about this chair, we're like, we want it. At some point, I would love to borrow it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Luckily, it's an easy traveling chair.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any bulletproof in it, any bulletproof panels.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out up on screen that we do have the display inside the shrine. I was able to find a quick photo there. And
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's the crazy table I'm referring to. But you can see Pope John Paul II in everywhere from, the Colosseum far center there, the Eiffel Tower. I mean, and also you can see in the top right, the World Youth Day Cross, which is something that the Knights of Columbus still are intimately involved in, as we have had it visit recently, and we've employed it as part of a pilgrimage program, physically carried around this area. So we try to always involve ourselves in things like that, because we get to use the Knights and the shrine to do good, and we're very excited about that.
I was going to say, that reminds me of when I was growing up, and I'd be like, "What? This guy goes everywhere."
Yeah.
He went absolutely everywhere. And I remember, I think it was the event he had, it was in Utah, and I was a teenager then, and I'm like, "Oh man, I wish I could go to that." But somebody from my parish actually did, which is really cool to hear their story and how inspired they were when they were able to attend that event. So it's really cool. And I will say our Wall of History does talk about it a little bit, but our Wall of History has to cover many years since the founding of the Knights of Columbus, and even before that, the precursor to the founding of the Knights of Columbus. So it's really exciting to see what you guys have actually done.
I saw that we had a question about, do we have anything from his Miami visit in 1987? And yes, we do. We have on display in our gallery of about him meeting with world leaders. We have a beautiful mahogany box. It's a Chippendale box. It has, it was made by the craftsmen at Williamsburg, so that it's traditional American craftsmanship. And that way it shows off what we're best at. It has a beautiful silver image of the United States on the front, and then there's small sapphire cabochons at every place that he visited. But that was a gift from President Reagan to him at Miami.
Yeah, and what's really cool is when I point out, when I bring groups around the exhibit, I talk about that and then show them the sapphire that's over in Los Angeles, because he held mass at Dodger Stadium, and in our collection we have the original blueprints for the layout of converting Dodger Stadium from a baseball stadium into a papal mass venue.
They're one of my favorite eBay finds, Ken. It was a great chance. The construction company was liquidating and getting rid of all of their old files. And so when that came up for $8, we needed it.
Yeah, you can actually find things on eBay.
Yes.
Once in a while.
It's definitely a hunt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring everybody on screen at the same time here in our gallery view. We have just a few more minutes left, and we've got a few more questions left. So I want to do what I like to call rapid fire. So just go through all the questions very quickly and with very, very short answers. All right. So now I say that, and this first question may not be one, but can you talk very briefly about the Knights of Columbus wanting to build the shrine?
So yeah, that's to build the shrine, actually, because the shrine was built by somebody else.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Transform the cultural center into the shrine.
Okay. Though actually, I think this might be a better question for you. I know we both started. I believe we actually started on the same exact day too.
Yes, we did.
So I don't have as much information on the shrine at the beginning. So
the Knights, and I will give you the story as I experienced it. The Knights came in, I believe 2010, they purchased the building. The collection we have now come under full ownership. At first, it was held in trust by the Cultural Center group. But the situation was that we had a lovely location dedicated to John Paul II here in the United States. He had blessed it. The president had visited. It was an established location that just needed love. It needed, again, the Knights to come in and help save. So doing what they always do, they came in and the building outside is the same. Inside, it's completely different. They completely almost gutted everything from top to bottom to make it not only a basically Smithsonian level exhibit, but also we put in enough space for our large church, because previously there was only a chapel. So the Knights basically were able to come in and create a national shrine out of something that had become a bit of a financial problem. And it was at first, we started out as an archdiocese shrine, and then we were upgraded by the USCCB to a national shrine. So it's been a long way coming. We've had to do a lot of work to kind of update things so that they work for our mission. But we're always, trying to make sure that we build on what they created and carry the message of John Paul II forward, no matter how we move.
Excellent. All right, let's move on to the next one over here. So the next question is, can you tell us a little bit about the recent visit by President Trump? I'll go ahead and take care of that one really quickly. So the recent visit on June 2nd of this year was originally supposed to be using the shrine as a venue for a signing of an executive order that talked about religious liberty. And religious liberty was a very, very important topic to St. John Paul II. And that's why the White House, who organized the event, thought it was a good place for the venue to be. Unfortunately, the bill signing was canceled at the last minute, but President Trump still wished for he and his wife to go see some of the artwork in the shrine, since the First Lady is from Slovenia and the artist who did the mosaics is also from Slovenia. But he also did spend some time in our chapel in quiet reflection, quiet prayer, and it was a very quiet event. There was no remarks, and there was a wreath laying ceremony in front of our statue. So very simple, but it was originally supposed to be the site of an executive order signing, which was later signed at the White House. Okay, next question. There are messages every year from Pope John Paul II to the Supreme Council, and they are published in the proceedings of the convention. Where can you find those proceedings?
So the annual report actually is usually published in the Columbia magazine in around October. And so that's most likely, I can't remember if the actual blessing is in there, but it's usually publicly announced as well. And I also will mention that if you can't find it online, we 100% have it in our Supreme Council archives. So I have a counterpart, actually I have two counterparts. We have the multimedia archives and the Supreme Council archives. So a significant amount of material can be found in actually one of those two places. So you just contact us, and all our information is actually on our website, and that you can just reach out and find out where you can get them.
Speaking of information on websites, I'm sure that this is available online. However, our opening dates are not are available online. But can you tell our audience about the exhibit hours that you have both at the museum normally? And again, we will post on our websites and on social media whenever both the shrine and the museum are reopening.
Yeah, so us normally would be every day. We are open every day from 10 to 5. And but obviously not right now. So I do want to make a plug that we have a very strong presence on social media right now. As many museums have done, start putting out more content, like lectures like this, for example. And we just concluded a series of lectures yesterday. We're taking a little break, but weekly lectures on various topics too. So definitely check out our website for any updates, and also our Facebook page, our YouTube page, and our Twitter page, which I am not on Twitter, so but I hear it's fabulous. And also, I would just bring up that currently our Voices for Freedom display has a web version too. And it's all on our website, which is, I can't remember it now. knightsofcolumbusmuseum.org, but you can Google it and you will find it.
Nice.
I'm sure one of my colleagues can put it in the chat.
All right, we got 2 more questions here. Is the museum collection accessible digitally online? I know you sort of chatted about this a little bit.
Do you want to talk about yours, or can I?
Of course, we are not currently, our collections database is only internal. We would love for it to be front facing one day. We have an amazing library with books from Poland that aren't available anywhere else in the world, even Poland, because of a wonderful archbishop who collected all of them and donated them. But my goal is to definitely have that possible. However, if there's anything that you're ever looking for, you can always just email us, and we're happy to respond and set up a time for you to come in. Just because it's not physically open all the time. Now is a little different, but in normal times, we're always happy to set up a research appointment with you.
Yeah, the same here.
Yes,
and
as you can see, the visitor services email address that was just posted in the chat. That's where you can make sure that you get me and anybody else that might need to be addressed in your emails.
Yep, and ours is above, and I think I was right. I think I may have been right.
Perfect.
I never email I just type in Knights of Columbus Museum, and it's always bookmarked. So. That's why.
All right, we got 1 more question here. And do we have pictures of St. John Paul II and his Mass that he celebrated on the Mall on October 7th, 1979? And the answer is?
Yes, we most definitely do. It is a huge piece that we talk about within the exhibit. And one of the featured photos is an absolutely stunning one that wasn't the highest quality originally when we found it, but we ended up being able to digitally clean it and update it a little bit. And now it's one of the backlit feature pieces of our exhibit about the travels of John Paul II. So come on by and I'll make sure to point it out to you.
When you're open.
When we're open, yeah, not now.
And random fact about that, I always like sharing this little tidbit. The altar used at that Mass is actually at my parish in Springfield, Virginia. That's
local knowledge there.
Exactly. All righty. Well, thank you again, Bethany and Bethany, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and we hope that all of you and our audience have enjoyed this webinar brought to you by the St. John Paul II National Shrine and the Knights of Columbus Museum. While neither of us are open to the public yet, we are hoping to do so in a limited capacity very soon. But in the meanwhile, we will continue to bring both of the shrine and the museum to you with more online programs like this webinar. Please be sure to visit our website or follow us on social media, including YouTube, to learn more about upcoming virtual events, to view exclusive content, and to stream Mass as well as prayer at the Hour of Mercy. Thank you again for joining us. God bless you, stay safe, and be well.
Thank you.